Section 1. Part 9 of the Itinerary of John Leland, in or about the years 1535 to 1543. Edited by Lucy Toulmin, Volume 5. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For further information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Commentaria Anglia. John of St. Helens, so called because he dwelt in St. Helens parish in Abingdon, was the first beginner and maker of the great bridge of stone over Isis at Abingdon. Afore his time it was a ferry. The making of this bridge was a great hindrance to the town of Wallingford, whither the trade was of them that came out of Gloucestershire, but now they pass by Abingdon. This John de St. Helen lived about the beginning of the reign of Henry VI. This John builded the fair hospital by St. Helens in Abingdon, and gave 50 li lands by year to the maintenance of it and the bridge. The bridge of arched stone at Dorchester is but a new thing to speak of, and there was a ferry at high waters over Thames, and the bridge of Abingdon seemeth to have been the Guilder O'Mara, Earl of Lincoln, was lord and owner of Bolingbroke Castle in Lincolnshire. Since it was told me that there were 2 cantuaries in the parish church of Bolingbroke of the Romaras foundation lately suppressed. There is at St. Saviour's at Newborough in Yorkshire a great painting or table in the prior or abbot's chamber yet standing of all the whole descent and lineage of the Mowbrays. Master Dr. Belaziz may send for a copy of it. Master Stapleton of London, brother-in-law to Sir Thomas Wharton, told me that the common opinion of the people about Penrith is that Darraby, Earl of Westmoreland, made much of the castle that now standeth at Penrith. He told me also that Darraby's armies were and be in divers parts of the dungeon in the castle of Caerlewes, whereupon he conjecteth that it was re-edified by him. The castle of Shrewsbury is set so that it is in the very place where the town is not defended with 7, else the town were totally environed with water. Dartington, the fair and goodly lordship by Totnes in Devonshire, was the lord of Audleys, since by a tainter, the Duke of Exeter, named Holland, that caused his whole household there to drink wine brought out of France. He was Admiral of England, and Sir Baldwin Fulfert, a Knight of the Sepulchre, was his under-admiral. Courtenay, Marquess of Exeter, had a late this Dartington. East Horsley, a mile from West Horsley in Southry, longed to the Bishop of Exeter, where is a pretty little manor place. Lacy, Bishop of Exeter, in Henry V and VI days, lay sometime at this house. This Lacy was Dean of Henry V Chapel at the Battle of Agincourt. This Lacy made the hall of Exeter Palace in London. Talbot, Earl of Shrewsbury, and his son Lord Lisle slain in France. This earl's bones were brought out of Normandy to Whitchurch in Shropshire. Talbot, next earl to him, slain at Northampton field, taking King Henry VI part. This earl had 5 sons. John, that had to wife the daughter of the Duke of Buckingham, slain at Northampton, died Earl of Shrewsbury, passing in journey at Coventry. James, that died of strips taken at Northampton field, but he came first to Chiffonall in Shropshire, a 2 miles from Tonge, where the Earls of Shrewsbury had a manor place of timber and a park. George, Earl of Shrewsbury, was born at Chiffonall. Gilbert, the 3rd son Knight of the Garter and Deputy of Calais in Henry VII days, and lieth buried at Whitchurch, and there is a chantry made by him. He was ambassador to Rome with Abbot Bere of Glastonbury for King Henry VII. This Gilbert was sore wounded at Bosworth, taking King Henry VII part. Sir Christopher, person of Whitchurch, was the 4th. Sir Humphrey Talbot Knight was the 5th. He used Calais. Anne, sister to the aforesaid 5th brethren, by the Earl, was married to Sir Henry Verney of Thonge, where she is buried in the college with her husband. Margaret, daughter to the Earl and sister to the aforesaid 5 brethren, was wife to Chawort, a gentleman of Derbyshire. John Earl of Shrewsbury had 2 sons, George and Thomas. Thomas died without issue. George Earl had to wife the daughter of the Lord Hastings that was beheaded in the Tower, and had divers men and women children. The late Earl of Cumberland married Margaret George's daughter, and another was married to the last Earl of Northumberland. The Lord Dacres married another. Francis, now Earl of Shrewsbury. The old Lord Hastings that was beheaded in the town had a son, Lord Hastings, that had to wife the daughter and heir of the Lord Hungerford. The old Lord Hastings also had a son called Richard, a knight that married the Lady Savile. William also was son to the old Lord Hastings. The old Lord Hastings had also a daughter that was wife to George Earl of Shrewsbury. Hastings, Lord Hastings, the old Lord Hastings' son and heir, had by her Lord Hastings, now Earl of Huntingdon. He had also a daughter wife to the Earl of Derby, mother to the Earl of Derby now living. Hastings Earl of Huntingdon had to wife Anne, daughter of the Duke of Buckingham, beheaded at Salisbury. The other daughter of this Duke of Buckingham was the first wife to the Lord Fitzwalter. Hastings, son and heir to the Earl of Huntingdon, married the late Lord Montacute's daughter. The Lord Stafford married the Lord Montacute's sister. The Duke of York's son, called Edward, never took greater name at the beginning of his wars against King Henry the 6th, but the name of the Earl of March, until that one Parr brought him 1500 men to go with him to field, and proclaimed him as he went for king. Master Field told me that there runneth a mighty long ditch from towards Litchett Malatravers in Dorsetshire. I saw in a roll of the high lordships of the Duke of York at Master Garter's these names following: Cunsborough Castle, Clifford Castle, the lordship of the Fair Maid of Kent. Master Garter told me that Quimborough Castle in Kent was of this hold, but he showed me not how or who should be this Fair Maid of Kent. There is a great hill or ridge that stretcheth in length from Glastonbury on to within 2 miles of Bridgewater, and is the very highway to pass from the one from the other of them. This balk or hill is of breadth to speak of, and of each side of it lieth low march ground. Brent March, going from Glastonbury, lieth on the right hand, and Marches on the left hand. The houses of the order called Sauignesensis, otherwise Fratres Grisae, were after reduced unto the order called Cisterciensis. Stratford in Essex was of this order by the foundation of Montfichet. This house, first set among the low marshes, was after with sore floods defaced, and removed to a cell or grange, longing to it, called Burgerstead, in Essex, a mile or more from Billerica. These monks remained at Burgstead until entreat was made that they might have some help otherwise. Then one of the Richards, kings of England, took the ground and abbey of Stratford into his protection, and re-edifying it, brought the foresaid monks again to Stratford, where among the marches they re-inhabited. One Agatha, daughter and heir to the Lord Tresborough, had 2 husbands. Gulda Albaneo was the one. She was buried in the priory of Newstead by Stamford. The Lord Tresborough gave in his arms 3 bolts. Stoke Daubeny is in Northamptonshire, hard by Rockingham Forest, 2 miles from Pipwell Abbey. The northern men brent Mitch of Staunford town. It was not since fully re-edified. Staunford was privileged, but in King Edward's days, for a borough, as concerning a place in the Parliament House. Yet it was a borough town in King Edgar's days, and then and since it hath all the way long to the crown. There were 7 principal towers or wards in the walls of Staunford, to each of the which were certain freeholders in the town allotted to watch and ward in time of need. Whereas I writ in the quires of Cornwall that Fowey was called the Old Cornish, Cowath, make it Fawath. The chief occasion and the original by likelihood of the manifold pools and lakes in Chestershire was by digging of marl for fattening the barren ground there to bear good corn, to the which pits the fall of the waters thereabout and springs hath resorted, and besides the ground there being so deeply dyked, there may be many springs rising naturally in them. There be tokens in Chestershire of divers salt pits beside them that be commonly now used, as by Cumbermere in a wood, and at the Dirtwich a late a new pit beside the old decayed, and at Aldresey a poor village of a 6 houses, a 4 mile from Malpace in the way almost to Chester, much by west hath been a salt pit, but now decayed, as almost in time out of mind. Such fir trees overthrown and covered with bog and march as be in Chestershire, Lancastershire, and Shropshire, may be found in some places of the Isle of Oxholme. Termonde is about 24 miles in length, and 21 in breadth, yet the common voice maketh it almost equal in length and breadth. Luggershall, sometime a castle in Wiltshire, 10 miles from Marlborough, and 4 miles from Andover, almost in the way betwixt. The castle stood in a park now clean down. There is of late times a pretty lodge made by the ruins of it, and longeth to the king. A cardinal, draper, and archbishop of Canterbury gave 1000 marks or leave to the erecting of London Bridge. King John gave certain vacant places in London to build on for building and reparation of London Bridge. A mason, being master of the bridge house, builded a fundamentis, the chapel on London Bridge, a fundamentis propriis impensis. Buckingham, Aylesbury, 5 miles from Notley, is a good market town, having 1 parish church and a house of Grey Friars. It standeth on a little brook, and is a mile from Thames stream. Wickham, Chiltern Hills. From Henley in Oxfordshire to Wickham in Buckinghamshire, and 8 miles. From Wickham to Dunstable in Bedfordshire, 18 miles. All this way goeth Chiltern Hills, whereof many be well replenished with wood, and partly with corn, all the soil being a chalk clay. Rivers in Buckinghamshire. Ouse or Ise. Another Ouse or Ise, as of one principal arm, riseth about West Wickham, out of one of the Chiltern Hills, and so cometh by Wickham the market town. The lesser arm is called Higden Brook, and riseth also in one of Chiltern Hills, a mile above Wickham. Both these streams meet at the west end of Wickham, and thence the whole bottom with one water goeth to Headon, and so to Oburn, where the Bishop of Lincoln hath a fair house, and thence a mile and more into the Thames. Market towns in Bedfordshire. Bedford, Biggleswade, 2 miles from Warden Abbey, a good market and 2 fairs. Shefford, 3 miles from Bedford, and a mile from Chicksand Priory. Luton, a very good market town for barley. Hamptell, Alness, Potton, Oburn, Dunstable, Dunstable. Castles in Bedfordshire. The castle of Bedford hard by the town, now clean down. There is a place called Falxherber again the castle. Betwixt King's Cross and the middle way to Newenham and the castle were found many bones of men buried. The castle of Hamptell, the Lord Fanope, a man of great fame in outward wars, and very rich, builded this house. Odell Castle, now nothing but strange ruins, longing to the Lord Bray. Odell town is by the castle, and is as it were 8 miles from Bedford, and by Harold Nunnery about a mile off. This Odell was a barony. Castle Park, a mile from London Abbey, Priory, and Landon, is within a mile of Olney. This park longed to the Souches, but now lately sold to the Lord Mordaunt. Peradventure this Laundon Castle. Rising Hoe hard by Castle Mill on Ouse. It longed to Warden Abbey, now to Mr. Gosterwick. Addingreaves, where be tokens of ditches, where some fortress hath been by the Ouse river, a mile or 2 from Rising Hoe. Isis, otherwise Ouse. Olney Water, Undle Water. Market towns in Worcestershire. Worcester on Severn, Evesham upon Avon river 12 miles from Worcester, Bromsgrove 10 miles north from Worcester, Persaw upon Avon 6 miles from Worcester, Kidderminster upon Stour river 12 miles toward north east from Worcester. Bewdley the sanctuary town hath hard by it the King's manor of Tickley standing on a hill. Castles in Worcestershire. Worcester. The ruins of Hanley Castle 7 miles from Worcester, lower of the farther ripe of Severn. Aberley, otherwise Abbottsley, sometime longing to the Earl of Warwick. Hartsbury Castle longing to the Bishop of Worcester, set on a strong rock 7 miles from Worcester. Helmledge, where the college is longing to the King. There standeth now but one tower, and that partly broken. As I went by I saw carts carrying stone thence to amend Persaw Bridge, about 2 miles off. It is set on the top of a hill, full of wood, and a townlet hard by, and under the root of the hill is the Vale of Evesham. Rivers in Worcestershire. Severn riseth in a hill called Plimlimmon. So to Caerseus, famous in name, but indeed a poor thoroughfare. From Mahencliff to Llandidlas, a good village, to Newton, and so runneth within a mile of Montgomeryck to the Welsh pole, and thence passeth within half a mile of Ponsbury College, to Shrewsbury, to Wrexhester alias Wroxeter, to Bridgnorth, to Worcester, to Tewkesbury, to Gloucester, etc. Avon, Arrow. Dowell's Riveret riseth, as I learned, in Clee Hill in Shropshire, and cometh by Clebury, a poor village, and cometh not far above Bewdley into Severn. Forests and Chase in Worcestershire. Wyre Forest, whereof some part is set in Worcestershire, but the most part in Shropshire, and stretcheth up from Holt upon Severn unto Bridgnorth. Bewdley is set in the marches of this forest, and stretcheth 2 miles beyond to a water called missing words. Wyre is more than 20 miles compass. Fakenham Forest totally, as I hear say, is set in Worcestershire, and is of less compass than Wyre. The Chase of Malvern is bigger than the other Wyre or Fakenham, and occupieth a great part of Malvern Hills. Great Malvern and Little also is set in the Chase of Malvern. Malvern Chase, as I hear say, is in length in some place 20 miles, but Malvern Chase doth not occupy all Malvern Hills. Wyre is 6 miles by north from Worcester. There be 3 salt springs, whereof 2 be near together. The third is 1/4 mile off. All these be made in the finest salt of England. Within a mile of Alcester is a limes. The Castle of Dudley is in Staffordshire, but hard by is Worcestershire. Sir Gilbert Talbot, Knight, hath a goodly house by Bromsgrove Market, called Grafton. Pakington hath a very goodly new house of brick, called Hampton Court, 6 miles off from Worcester somewhat northward. Market towns in Warwickshire. Warwick, Coventry, Henley, I have it described. Monk Kirkby, I know the site of this. Alcester. Rugby, Tamworth upon Anker, I have it described. Nuneaton, I have it described. Atherstone, I have it described. Remisham, in the way to Chesterward, 12 miles from Coventry, I have it described. Southam, 6 miles from Warwick. Castles in Warwickshire. Warwick, Killingworth, Braundon, 5 miles by north from Coventry, now desolated, sometime, as I heard say, longing to the Lord Mortimer. Brinklow, 5 miles by east from Coventry, now desolated, longing sometime, as men say, to the Mortimers. Baginton Castle, now desolated, it longed to the Baggets, 2 miles from Coventry. Ashley Castle. Rivers. Avon, Anker. Sow riseth near Hawkesbury, 3 miles from Coventry north east. Fluit per Sow Pagum, by White Lee, et propist only village in Tamam labitur. Leam, coming out of Northamptonshire, it cometh by Granborough, Leamington, Marton, off Kirk Pargus, and at Edmund Coop Bridge into Avon. Cole flew Oritor in Yardle Wood prope King's Northton, and after that by Coleshill he goeth into Tame. Blythe riseth in Warwickshire near Rowton by Bolshall, Hampton, Pakington, and then going betwixt Coleshill and Maxstoke near Shustock village into Tame. The length of Warwickshire be estimation from Rollerich stones by Chipping Northton to Tamworth, as to the limits of Oxfordshire and Staffordshire. Thus the length is about 36 miles. Watling Street towards Rugby is a limes upon Leicestershire. A mile above Bremicham is a limes upon Staffordshire. Market towns in Shropshire: Shrewsbury, Bridgnorth, are 14 miles from Shrewsbury. Wellington, are 7 miles from Shrewsbury toward London way. Drayton upon Tern River, are 12 miles from Shrewsbury. At Blawheath, a mile above Drayton by north, was a field fought between King Edward's men and Henry VI. The Earl of Salisbury and northern men on King Edward's part overcame the Lords Audsley, slain, and Dudley, wounded, with Queen Margaret, wife to Henry VI, and Chestershire men lost in the field. She came Eccleshall thither. Halls, Bishop of Chester, her chaplain, caused the Queen to lie there. Whitchurch, are 14 or 15 miles from Shrewsbury. Newport upon a brook of 12 or 14 miles from Shrewsbury. Within a mile of Newport is a goodly large mere or pool. Ludlow. Peter Undergod, a gentleman longing to an English Prince of Wales, did build St. John's Hospital without gate of Ludlow, and after gave lands unto it. Bishop's Castle, a very celebrate market. Castles in Shropshire: Shrewsbury, Bridgnorth on Severn, 14 miles from Shrewsbury lower on the river. Course Castle, on a hill 5 miles from Shrewsbury by south west, longing to the Duke of Buckingham, now to the Lord Stafford. Montgomery, the King's Castle, in the Shire, but not Day, 12 miles from Shrewsbury. It was once a great walled town called Cairo Valdwyn. Cherbury Hundred was annexed to Montgomery as a help to have men out of it for defence. Ludlow, 20 miles from Shrewsbury. Newport upon a brook, or moor, 14 miles by east from Shrewsbury. Whitchurch, upon a brooklet, are 16 miles by west from Shrewsbury. Drayton upon Tern River, are 14 miles from Shrewsbury. Wigmore Castle, are 20 miles from Shrewsbury, standing on a brooklet sometime almost dry. Whittington, a castle of the Lord Fitzwarren's, 6 miles from Shrewsbury upward almost on Severn, and by this goeth Offa's Ditch. Shrawerdine, 4 miles from Shrewsbury, longing to the Earl of Arundel, 2 miles from Whittington, betwixt Shrewsbury and it. Red Castle by Whitchurch, are late the Lord Audley's, 8 miles plain north from Shrewsbury, now all ruinous. It hath been strong and hath decayed many a day. Middle Castle longing to the Lord of Derby, 3 miles from Shrewsbury, very ruinous. Morton Corbett in a marsh, 4 miles from Shrewsbury by north, longing to the Corbetts. Knocking Castle in Shropshire, now a ruinous thing, longed to the Lord Lestrange, and now to the Earl of Derby. Chorlton Castle on Tern, longing to the Lord Powys, 6 miles from Shrewsbury, and a mile from Tern village. Tern is to say a lake or pool. Cortham Castle upon Corfe Riveret, Undy at Corvesdale, 14 miles from Shrewsbury by south. Acton Burnell was a goodly manor place or castle, 4 miles from Shrewsbury, where a parliament was kept in a great barn. It longed once to the Lord Lovell, then to the Duke of Norfolk, and now to Sir John Duddle. Burnell's daughter was married to the Lord Lovell, and thereby the Lovell's land increased, and after was made Viscount Lovell. Lovell had Acton Burnell. Some of these castles, though they be in Shropshire, yet they be not Day, for they be privileged and use their own laws and courts, except the last statute let them. Oswestry Castle is now in Shropshire. Kensham Castle clean down, It stood within a 2 miles of Ludlow on a hill-top. Holgate Castle, sometime longing to the Lord Lovell, standeth under the Clee Hills hard by Corvesdale, a 6 miles from Ludlow. The Duke of Norfolk exchanged it for other lands with Mr. Dudley. Bramscroft, a very goodly place like a castle, longing to the Earl of Shrewsbury. It standeth in Clee Hills or about them a miles from Ludlow. Stokesay, longing sometime to the Ludlows, now to the Vernons, builded like a castle 5 miles out of Ludlow. Sir Richard Ludlow had 2 daughters. One was married to Humphrey Vernon, and the other to Thomas Vernon, brethren to the late Sir Henry Vernon of the Peak. The third son of Henry married one of Montgomery's heirs. Shepton Corbet Castle, a 6 or 7 miles from Ludlow, almost in the way betwixt Ludlow and Bishop's Castle. Hopton Corbet a half way betwixt Bishop's Castle and Wigmore, and a 3 miles from Shepton. Bishop's Castle, well maintained, is set on a strong rock, but not very high. Abbeys and priories in Shropshire. The Abbey of Shrewsbury. Alban Monasterium by Albertbury, long since suppressed. Ombridge, Black Shannons in the way to London, 2 miles beyond Wellington Market, and a 2 miles beyond Linkle Abbey. Linkle, or Lilleshall. Brerewood, Priory of White Nuns lately suppressed in the very march of Shropshire toward Derbyshire. Villevoise, White Monks. Hormond, Black Shannons. Wenlock, Black Monks. Tong, a little thoroughfare betwixt Ulmerhampton and Newport, 7 miles from Ulmerhampton, 5 from Newport. It is in Shropshire. There is a college and warden with an almshouse of the ancient foundation of the Vernons of Haddon in the Peak. Many or almost all lie there that were famous of them since the foundation. There was an old castle of stone called Tong Castle. It standeth half a mile from the town on a bank, under the which runneth the brook that cometh from Weston to Tong. Weston is 2 miles off, and is in Staffordshire. Sir Henry Vernon, a late days, made the castle new, all of brick. Rivers in Shropshire. 7. Turn riseth near Mere village in Staffordshire. It goeth by Drayton, Turnhill, Bestford, and Sleep villages, and cometh into 7 at Atcham village, a 2 miles from Shrewsbury. I heard otherwise that it came into 7 about Turnbridge. Corfe, rising in Corvesdale, cometh into Teme at Ludlow. Corvedale, plentiful of corn, stretcheth from about Wenlock to Ludlow. Ree, coming by Wenlock. Roden riseth in the lake of Combermere. After it runneth by Whitchurch, a good market town, by Lee village and Shawbury village, and at Walcott into Turn. There be very great breams and other good fishes in Combermere. Onny cometh into Teme about Broomfield, a sell to Gloucester. Harmer Pole a mile from Shrewsbury. Teme river entereth into the farther side of 7, not far from Powick Mill, a mile and a half beneath Worcester. The site and commodities of the soil of Shropshire. There be found in moorish and mossy ground a 7 miles from Shrewsbury, and in other places of the shire, firwood roots, and also the whole trees hewn down in old time, but of whom or for what cause no man there can tell. They find them lying in the ground, sometime a foot or 2 deep, sometime a 5 or 6 foot deep. Many of them be of a great length and without twigs. In Brenning they smell well. Mortimer's Clebury in Shropshire, a village and a park by Wyre Forest, in the way betwixt Ludlow and Bewdley. Clee Hills be divided into 3 parts. The hills next to Wenlock be called the Brown Clee, and there be deer. St. Margaret's Clee toward Ludlow. Thetterston Clee betwixt the forest of Wyre, where is a fair timber, and Ludlow. Leadwick Brook springeth in Clee Hills, and running a 7 miles goeth into Teme at Burford, where is the house of the barony of Burford longing to Mr. Cornwale. Clee Hills begin a 4 miles from Tenbury, and stretch within a 4 miles of Wenlock, so that by guess I count them in length, an 8 or 10 miles. In these hills riseth Ree river, and at Newton Mills in Worcestershire, 3 miles beneath Tenbury, cometh into Tame. The limits of Shropshire. Blakemere, a very large park nigh to Whitchurch, is, as I have heard say, in some part a limes betwixt Shropshire and Chestershire. In the park is a fair manor place. Monkbridge, a mile beneath Tenbury, is, as I there heard say, a limes to Worcestershire, Shropshire, and Hertfordshire. Langfeld Dale, Stretton's Dale. Sir Richard Mannering, chief of that name, dwelleth 3 miles by east from Price village at a village called Heightfeld, having a park and great plenty of wood about him. Sandford dwelleth at Sandford, where is only his place and a park 3 miles by south from Whitchurch. Newport dwelleth at a place called Archall. It standeth betwixt Roden and Tern rivers towards their mouths. Sir John Talbot dwelleth 16 miles from Shrewsbury in the way to London, called Hampton village. His house standeth in a park called Pepper Hill. The head house of the Chorltons is now at Apley, half a mile from Wellington market, a mile from the Wrekin hills. Howbeit Chorlton Castle seemeth in time past to have been the principal. There be divers of the Chorltons gentlemen of Shropshire. Chorlton of Chorlton Castle married the heir of the Lord Powis and Grey, since Lord Powis married Chorlton's heir. Arthur Newton hath almost made away all his lands. Yarn is made in certain places of Shropshire, and especially in the woods betwixt Belvoise and Wenlock. Coals be digged hard by Ombridge, where the priory was. Market towns in Staffordshire. Stafford. There is a free school for grammar in Stafford, made by Sir Thomas Country, parson of Ingestre by Heywood, and Sir Randall, a chantry priest of Stafford. Lichfield. Country and Randall made St. Said steeple, a fair square tower, and the bells in Stafford town. Newcastle under Line. The parish is at Stoke-on-Trent, a good mile off. The town useth to come to a chapel of St. Sunday by the castle. All the castle is down save one great tower. There was a house of Black Friars in the south side of the town. Burton upon Trent hath but one parish church and a chapel at the bridge end. Trent compasseth a great piece of the town. Many marblers working in alabaster. At Oxeter one parish church. The men of the town useth grassing, for there be a wonderful pastures upon Dove. It longeth to the earldom of Lancaster. It is in the way to Derby from Stafford, and is 9 mile east-north-east from Stafford. A free school founded by a priest, Thomas Allen. He founded another at Stone in the reign of Queen Mary. Tutbury, a small market. Wolnerhampton, a very good market town. In it is a free school made by Sir Stephen Jenning, Mayor of London. Tamworth. The College of Windsor give the prebends of Wolnerhampton, and the Dean of Windsor is dean there. Tettenhall, a village and a college about a mile from Wolnerhampton. Castles in Staffordshire. Stafford not far from Stafford town on the river of Sow. The castle or pretty pile of Careswell, 3 miles by north from Stone. A later priory of Shannons, sometime belonging to the Montgomerys, now to the Gifford. Lichfield in old time had a castle. There is a causeway through the pool to the castle, and divers bridges in the causeway. A water issueth by them through the causeway. The castle standeth in low ground, and it standeth as a mediamnis in the pool, the water whereof is in some part 1/4 mile broad in some place, and in some less. Newcastle under Line, so called of a brook running thereby, or of a hill or wood thereby so called. There cometh a brook out of the pool about the castle. It longed to the Duke of Lancaster. Brook running out of words missing pool cometh by the town. Healy a castle of the Lord Audley's, and 2 miles off is Audley village, whereby some think that it is called Healy Castle for Audley Castle. The tenants of Audley come to this castle. Tutbury Castle longing to the King now by the Duke of Lancaster. It was afore Ferrari's castle, Earl of Derby. Eccleshall Castle, longing to the Bishop of Chester. There be 5 great pools, a brook cometh through them, and thence issuing out. Stursley or Stourton Castle, without fail, is in Staffordshire, and I heard that there was a Lord Stourton, a baron of this Stourton. It is the king's. Pole lay at it by licence, and there Cardinal Pole was born. Tamworth Castle upon Anker river, longing to one of the Ferrars. Part of Tamworth town standeth in Staffordshire, part in Warwick, but the castle whole without fail in Warwickshire. Not very far from Stone Priory appeareth the place where King Wulfhere's castle or manor place was. This Berry Hill stood on a rock by a brook side. There appear great dykes and squared stones. It is a mile from Stone toward the moorland. Dudley Castle hard on the borders of Worcestershire, but the castle self standeth in Staffordshire. Rivers in Staffordshire: Sow, word missing, and runneth by Stafford, per Canobians St. Thomai, a good mile off, by Shuckborough, and at Haywood Bridge into Trent. Trent. I have the course of Trent and Newark. Dove. Pen fluviolus per Pentrake, and prope Stafford in Sau de l'Abitur. Churnet. I have perfectly the course of Churnet. Blythe (Flew) springeth at Whitley Moor. It runneth by Draycott village, Tane village, and about at Oxeter, goeth into Dove. Tame riseth. Per Pontem Tamensem, Hamesworth, Pargum, Ashton, Birmingham, per Crudworth bridge. Kinisbury, Farsley, Pargum, Tamesworth, et apud Wicknaw, bridge in Trentham. Kinisbury is a fair manor place, and a lordship of 140 li. One Braesbridge is lord of it. It is in Warwickshire. Abbeys and priories in Staffordshire. There were divers tombs of the lords of Stafford in Stone Priory, made of alabaster. The images that lay on them were after the suppression of the house carried to the Frères Augustine in Ford Bridge, alias Stafford Green, cis flumen, and in this Frères hung a pedigree of the Staffords. St. John's, a free chapel on the green at Stafford, hard by Sow river. The Grey Frères were at the other end of the town, ultra flumen. Mr. Streetie of Lichfield told me that one Langton, Bishop of Lichfield, made the fair palace at Lichfield, and the close wall, and that he made Eccleshall Castle, Shuckborough Manor Place, and the palace by Stroud. This Langton was treasurer to Edward I. There is a chase ground in Staffordshire, having deer, called the Seven Hays, lying betwixt Lichfield and Wolverhampton. There is a pretty chase by Penkridge, of the King's, where Littleton of Pillenhall is foster by inheritance. Forests, parks, and chases in Staffordshire. The Forest of Neede Wood by Tutbury, and betwixt Tutbury and Lichfield, but the nearest part of it is a 5 miles from Lichfield. There long to Tutbury Honour 4 parks, the Castle Hay, Hanbury, Barton, and the New Park. This forest is marvellously plenished with deer. Cannock Forest, a great thing, merely longing to the Bishopric of Lichfield. There is Bewdesert, his place and park. Bewdesert in Langdon parish, and in this parish is a great piece of Cannock Forest, and Shuckborough, his place, where is a park now of red deer, is in the side of Cannock Wood. Shuckborough was once Suchborough's, with the long beard, and he, as some say, gave it to the mitre of Lichfield. I know no certainty of this gift. Some call Shucksborough Haywood, because it standeth by it. There is a fair pool betwixt Cannock Wood and Shucksborough. There lie 5 fair pools by the castle of Eccleshall, and the park of Blore are 2 miles off in the same lordship is a 5 or 6 miles about, and is the bishop's, and is full of wonderful fair wood. The chase of Sutton 5 miles out of Lichfield, whereof part was in Stafford and part in Warwickshire. It is now clean put down, and this is the place where Vesey, Bishop of Exeter, hath planted houses of stone and brick, and many good dwellers in them. One Mountford a knight, attended in Henry the 7th times, had a manor place here called Sutton by Sutton town. This Mountford had a house in Warwickshire called Coleshill Hall, and a park that was given to Sir Simon Digby, Lieutenant of the Tower of London. The limits of Staffordshire. The site of the shire and commodities of the soil. Seacoles at Wednesbury, a village of 5 miles from Lichfield by west-south-west. Walshall, a little market town in Staffordshire, a mile by north from Wednesbury. There be many smiths and bit makers in the town. It longeth now to the king, and there is a park of that name scant 1/2 mile from the town in the way to Wolverhampton. At Walshall be pits of seacoals, pits of lime that serve also South town 4 miles off. There is also iron ore. Market towns in Chestershire. Chester upon Dee, Nantwich upon Weaver, 14 miles be west from Chester. The parish church is impropriated to Cumbermere. Some say that Acton is the mother church. It is no market. Northwich upon Weaver, 12 miles from Chester. It hath but a chapel. The parish church is a mile off at Budworth, impropriated to Norton. Maxwell, hard on the edge under Maxwell Forest, and yet out of the forest, 24 miles north-west from Chester toward Derbyshire. Congleton upon Dane, 20 miles from Chester, plain east out of Chester, and 6 miles out of Northwich. Knutsford Market, 18 miles by north-east. It hath but a chapel. The parish church is at Asbury, a mile off. Stoppard upon Mersey, 6 miles from Manchester. The parish church is in the town. Mr. Waring is called there Baron of Stoppard, for one of the Warings of Chestershire married one Stoppard Baron of Stoppard daughter, and hereabout Henry the 4th days. The ancient house longing to Warings was Poynton, where he lieth now, for Stoppard manor place is decayed. At Poynton is a park. Poynton is in the middle way betwixt Stoppard and Maxwell town, 4 miles from each. It is in Prestbury parish, in the which parish be divers places of ancient gentlemen. Castles in Chestershire. Chester. Biston Castle builded or re-edified by Ranulph Earl of Chester. Halton Castle builded by Randal Earl of Chester. It standeth about the side of Mersey within a mile of his bank, and within a mile of Runcorn, now a poor townlet by a salt creek. Shotwick in Wirral. Look whither Chartley Castle, builded by Ranulph Earl of Chester, be in Chestershire. Chartley is in Staffordshire, and 8 miles from Dewlacress Abbey, and 5 miles from Uttoxeter Market. There is a mighty large park. The old castle is now in ruin, but old Earl Randal, as some say, lay in it when he builded Dewlacress Abbey. This castle standeth a good flight shot from the building, and a goodly manor place that now is there, as the principal house of the Ferrars, and came them to be similitude by marriage. There was a place of the Lord Audley's in Chestershire, betwixt Cumbermere and Nantwich, called Newhall Tower. It is now down. There be moats and fair water. Rivers in Chestershire. Dever, I have his course. Weaver, I have his course. Above Frodsham, Weaver by himself goeth to the sea. Davon, alias Dane, riseth in the 100 of Maxfield, where the forest is. The head of Dane is in the very border of Derbyshire and Maxwell Forest, and as it is said, about the head of this river be the limits of Chestershire, Staffordshire, and Derbyshire. After that, Dane cometh 3 miles beneath the head. If rain come fast, it rageth on stones, though after it cometh from Congleton it runneth on ground somewhat moorish. Abbeys and priories in Chestershire. Right again Learpool, 2 miles over Mersey, was a priory of canons called Northton, now suppressed. Forests and chases and parks in Chestershire. The fair and large forest of Delamere, beside the which I remember none, and there is plenty of red deer and fallow. The whole forest of Maxwell, except it be a small speck, is in Chester. Notable places of gentlemen in Chestershire. In the south side of the Forest of Delamere. Sir John Downe, alias Dane, dwelleth at Uckkenton, within 3 miles of Gunbury, a mile from Torporley, a long paved village or thoroughfare, and 3 miles from Vale Royal. The first house of the Egertons is at Egerton in Malpas parish. He hath also the manor of Oulton. The ancients of the Egertons dwelleth now at Oulton, and Egerton buildeth there now. The second of the house of the Starkies is at Darley, about a 5 miles from Northwich, a scant mile from Oulton, and a 3 miles from Vale Royal. The fruitfulness of the soil of Chestershire. Bunbury, a gentleman, not in, but hard by Wirral. Irene Breton married William Handford of Handford heir, but she had a son afore by Sir John Stanley, bastard to Stanley, Bishop of Healy. Sir Richard Brereton, a younger son to Sir Randal of Brereton, married the only daughter of Wilkin Stanley, and heir to Sir Geoffrey Massey of Tatton Manor and Park. Mere of the Mere, 2 mile from Knutsford, a man of 100 mark land. Lee of Highley, the ancientest of the Lees of this country, a mile from Knutsford. Lee of Booth, half a mile from Knutsford, and hath a park. Lee of Adlington, a mile from Presby, a man of 300 mark land. Leicester of Tabley, betwixt Northwich and Knutsford, a 3 miles from each. Leicester of younger brother of Toast, his manor place, a man of 100 mark land. Daniel of Tabley, a mile from Leicester. Booth of Dunham dwelleth at Dunham, a 3 miles from Knutsford. It hath a fair park, and is a mile from Altrincham, a poor thing, where is a mere. Booth of Barton in Lancastershire is the ancientest. Booth Bishop of Hereford was a younger brother of Booth of Barton in Lancastershire. Davenport of Broom Hall, 2 miles from Stoppard by west, dwelleth at Broom Hall. He hath a 2 marks land. Davenport of Woodford, a 2 miles from Broom Hall. The best and first house of the Davenports is at Davenport, a great old house covered with lead on the Ripe of Davon, 3 miles above Congleton. Davenport of Henbury cometh out of this house. Henbury Place is a 2 miles plain north from Maxfield. At Henbury is a great pool. This Davenport hath a piece of Beechton's land. Fitton of Gosworth had another piece. Fitton dwelleth at Gosworth now, but not part of Beechton lands. Sir Percy of Dutton, chiefest house, is in Dutton, at 8 miles from Chester. Hatton, a fair place longing to Sir Percy of Dutton, about a 4 little miles from Chester. Bostock of Bostock in Henry VII time had a daughter and heir married to Sir John Salvage. Bostock was of a very ancientness in Chestershire and in Daneham parish, and both Bulkleys of this parish, and Lestwick also. The last Bulkley of Eton was Nepos. Venable's daughter was his wife, yet alive. Bulkley of Watcroft, a 2 mile from the Northwich, now dwelling in Wales. William of Bulkley, Chief Justice of Chester, was setter up of Eton. Bulkley of Eton had some land afore he was justice. These 2 Bulkleys contend either to be the elder house of that name. The name rose by a lawyer. Bulkley of Wales is a man of far greater land than the other. Bulkley of Eton's stock came to a daughter, and Lestwich had her, but Sir Gull of Breton brought her to Eton. Egerton, one of the younger brethren of Egerton, dwelleth at Riddle within a half mile of Bulkley Hill, where the head of Weaver river is, and near is a pool of a mile and more in length, and out of it issueth an arm, that some after goeth into Weaver, and straight much encreaseth it. This Riddle Hall made of a poor old place the fairest gentleman's house of all Chestershire, by Sir William Stanley, helper to King Henry VII, and he was attainted, and Riddle was given to Ralph Egerton. There is a very large Riddle longer to Daniel that was servant to Sir W. Standel, and few men know what became of this Spurstow hath a place a mile off, and a pool by it called New Pool. Bunbury College 1/2 a mile off. Sir Hugh Calverley made the College of Bunbury about Henry V days. Sir Hugh Calverley and Sir Robert Knowles were companions and great men of war. Biston dwelleth at Biston 1/2 a mile from Biston Castle. Davenport dwelleth a 3 dim from Biston by east at a place called Calverley, having certain very high trees about his house that men may see very far off. This Davenport is of less lands than the residue. Priestland dwelleth at Wardley in Bunbury parish. It is a mile from Calverley. A mile and a half thence is Barbridge, and there renneth Bar Riveret after coming into Weaver. Sir Randal Mannering dwelleth at Badderley, a 3 miles from Nantwich by south west, and hath a park and a mere called Baddlemere. Starkey, the ancients of that stock, dwelleth at Wembury, a mile and a half from Combermere. There is a park full of marvellous fair wood, but no deer. About these 2 places is plenty of wood. Needham, a knight, dwelleth at Shenton, a 4 miles from Combermere by east. He hath builded a fair house. It is moated. Shenton is in Shropshire, and Sir John Needham was Chief Justice of Chester, much set up this name. Cranage Manor and place in Chestershire, 3 miles from Middlewich, longeth to Needham of Shenton. The manors of Baddington, Bromold, and Austerson came to Sir Robert Needham, that now liveth by his mother, one of 3 heirs of Sir John Braundley. The second daughter was married to Gerald of Bryn in Lancastershire, and he hath Braundley, the head house, and Winnington, both in Staffordshire, and other lordships beside. Harper of Rushall had the 3, and with her the lordship of Chalmerston, 2 miles from Nantwich. Braundley, the head house of Braundley the knight in Staffordshire, in the great large parish of Eccleshall, where the Bishop of Chester Castle is. Sir John Oldford of Oldford, a mile from the Northwich. Foulchester, a 4 miles from Nantwich south east, hath a fair place, and a man of fair lands. He is a knight. John Ashley of Ashley, 2 mile out of Knutsford. Sir Henry Delves dwelleth a 3 miles east from Nantwich, and hath a fair house. Richard Leftwich of Leftwich. Calverley dwelleth at a manor place called Lee, 5 miles from Biston by south west. The second house of the Breretons, where Sir Randal the late dwelled, is at Mallpass, a little Sunday market, having 3 streets all paved. His fair place is at the very end of the south street. Sir Randal erected a grammar school there, and a hospital. Chumley dwelleth at Chumley Hall, a fair house having a little mere by it, a fair wood and a moss of firewood. It is in the midst of the way betwixt Malpas and Bunbury, 3 miles from each. The eldest house of the Breretons is Brereton Hall, by the Middlewich, possessed now of Sir William Brereton. Minshall dwelleth at Minshall, a 5 miles west from the Middlewich. Venables, born of Kindreton, dwelleth at Kindreton by the Middlewich. Venables be ancient gentleman. Stanley a knight. Poole a knight. Massey at Puddington. Market towns in Derbyshire: Derby, Orsworth, Bakewell, Ashburn in the Peak, Chesterfield in the Peak, Mansfield. Castles in Derbyshire: Duffield had a castle. Horston, Codnor, sometime longing to the Lord Greys, 5 miles by east from Horston. It is now all ruinous. Castle of the High Peak, longing to the King. Rivers in Derbyshire: Derwent riseth plain west a little above Blackwell, a market town. To Darley in the Peak, to Wensley village, to Matlock village, to Crumford village, and through Crumford bridge to Watstondwell bridge, to missing word, Darley, Derby, Sawler ferry, 5 miles be land from Derby, where it goeth into Trent. Trent, Manifold. Amber riseth east of Chesterfield, and leaveth 2 miles on the left hand unto us, to Winfield village, and 8 miles. To Amber bridge 2 miles. To Critch Chase, a wood, fast by where it runneth into Derwent. Wye river good for trouts riseth in Derbyshire near St Anne of Buxton's Well, so to Bakewell a market town, to Haddon, and thereabout Wye cometh into Derwent. Egglesburn riseth in a rock in the parish of Orworth. Thence to Idus are 3 miles. To Dovefell church are 3 miles. A little beyond Dovefell church, at a place Egglesburn mouth goeth into Derwent. Abbeys and priories in Derbyshire. The limits of Derby. The fruitfulness of the shire. Forests and chases in the shire. Notable places of gentlemen. The limits of Lincolnshire. Market towns in Keston. Stanford, Bourne. Deeping Market church is dedicated to St. Goodlake. The church of the other Deeping is dedicated to St. James. A mile from Deeping Market is the ruin of a castle called Maxey, whereof some part standeth yet. It was by all likelihood the Lord Wake's house. Of late days it appartened to the Countess of Richmond, King Henry the 7th, mother by the right of the missing words. Sleaford town nor market is of no price. The ornaments of it is the Bishop of Lincoln's castle and the late Lord Hussey's house. Kyme, the goodly house and park, is a 3 miles from Sleaford. Grantham. From Stamford to Grantham, all in Keston, and by meetly good plenty of wood, 18 miles. From Stamford to Beechfield, a mean thoroughfare, 12 mile. Much plain ground, saving in the parts about Beechfield self. From Beechfield to Ancaster, a poor thoroughfare, all by plain and much heathy ground. From Ancaster to Lincoln, 16 miles, all by like plain grounds in Keston. Here mark that all this heath or plain from Beechfield to Lincoln beareth the name of Ancaster. From Bourne in Keston, to go through by Holland to Boston, 20 miles all by low ground, and much marsh, and no wood in manor. Low Holland. Croyland, Quapalold, vulgo Hopload. High Holland. Boptolp's town, standeth hard on the river of Lindis. The great and chiefest part of the town is on the east side of the river, where is a fair market place and a cross with a square tower. The chief parish church was at St. John's, where yet is a church for the town. St. Botolph's was but a chapel to it, but now it is so risen and adorned that it is the chiefest of the town, and for a parish church the best and fairest of all Lincolnshire, and served so with singing, and that of cunning men, as no parishes in all England. The society and brotherhood longing to this church hath caused this, and now much land longeth to this society. The steeple being quadrata turris, and a lantern on it, is both very high and fair, and a mark both by sea and land for all the quarters thereabout. There is a goodly font, whereof part is of white marble or of stone very like to it. There be 3 colleges of Freres, Grey, Black, and Augustines. There is also an hospital for poor men, and in the town or near to it the late Lord Huse had a place with a stone tower. All the building of this side of the town is fair, and merchants deal in it, and a staple of wool is used there. There is a bridge of wood to come over Lindis into this part of the town, and a pile of stone set in the middle of the river, the stream whereof is sometimes as swift as it were an arrow. On the west side of Lindis is one long street, and on the same side is the White Freres. The main sea is 6 miles off Boston. Divers good ships and other vessels ride there. The Lord Willoughby had a house at Hearsby, and a park of black deer, a 2 miles from Spilsby, where, as I hear say, he intendeth to build sumptuously. Spilsby, a mean market town, having houses most part thatched, and some redded. In it is one meetly fair place, longing to one Hastings, a gentleman which came from Southfolk, where he hath land. This town is 5 miles east from Horn Castle, and about as much from the seaside as in the middle way, and it standeth on the edge of the middle marsh of Low Lindsey. Rivulus practilabitur, and many springs be about it, and the soil sandy. Alford, 16 miles from Boston. Alford, a mean market town in Low Lindsey Marsh, a mile from the main sea. The town is all thatched and redded, and a brook cometh by it. There is good wheat and beans in most parishes of the Low Marsh in Lindsey, but little barley, as in stiff clay ground. no wood in the low marsh of Lindsey. At Huttos Marsh 4 miles off come ships in from the divers places and discharge. Wainfleet, a pretty market standing on a creek near to the sea. To this town long small vessels. The school that Wainfleet, Bishop of Winchester, made there, and endowed with 10 li land, is the most notable thing of that town. Wainfleet, 7 mile from Alford, toward Boston. Louth, Rayson Market. Castor standeth on a cliff side 1/2 mile off from Ankholm river, and a 4 miles from Langford bridge, and toward 6 miles east from Spittal. There is a Saturday market, the town almost all thatched, and in hominem memoria often hurt with fire. There is a speaking of a fortress that hath sometime been there, cometh springs from the hills by Castra. Launford, Forsan Langford, Grimsby, Tattershall upon Bain river, and the Eye or Ree, a great river, is about 1 mile off. It is pretty small market. It is 5 miles from Horncastle, and 3 from Bardeny. Horncastle, as far as I can learn, is now most builded within the circuit of an old walled town, or some high castle, as appeareth from divers ruins of a wall. It hath one fair parish church. Aluit Urbano e Verino qui Paulo infra, op Barnum. Dr. Thibbleby of the Queen's College hath lands about the old walls of Horncastle. Waring riseth of divers springs. Aliquot passuum, millibus apopidum, missing word, petit. Pons ibius super verinum flu. The market is very good and quick. Occupiers in the town, missing word, wood hard, missing word. Bullingbroke hath once a year a fair, but it hath no weekly market. The castle is meetly well maintained, and moated about, having a drawbridge. Rivers and brooks in Lincolnshire. At Kelsthorpe or thereabout, as it were 3 miles west from Louth, riseth a great brook there called Bain. So to Baumberg, peradventure for Bainburg, a village 4 miles off, thence to Horncastle, a market town 4 miles off. All this way it runneth, most by south. After to Tattershall, alias Tateshall, flat west it runneth. Tattershall is a market town 5 miles off Horncastle, and so to Dogdyke Ferry, about 1 mile, where it renneth into the Ree, alias Lindis, the which divideth Lindsey fro Kesney. Lindis. It ebbeth and floweth within a little of Dogdyke Ferry. Lindsey lieth by east and Kesney by west. The beck or brook that runneth by the north side of the Abbey of Bardenay, and within 1/4 of a mile lower runneth into the great Ree of Lindis, is called Panton Beck. This beck riseth in High Lindsey, as Master West thinketh not very far from the quarters whereas the Bain doth rise. Then to Hills, a manor place of Master Hansard. So to Panton, a village 5 miles off. Thence to Ragby village about 2 miles, whereof it is sometime called Ragby Beck. So to Bardeny Abbey 4 miles, and then into the Ree. The monks hold opinion that the old Abbey of Bardeny was not in the very same place where the new is, but at a grange or dairy of theirs 1 mile off. Lude River, to Ludebrook village, to Lude alias Louth, the fair market town, 4 miles by Lude Park. Thence to Grimbleby village 1 mile, and to Saltfleet Creek 4 miles off, and so to the sea. Salt Creek is a havenet, and as the shore lieth it is 6 miles above Huttost Creek. Meetly good plenty of wood about Bardeny and Bardlings, Reesby, and Kirstead Abbeys. Dimmock dwelleth at Screlsby, 2 miles from Horncastle. Sir Christopher Willoughby's son and heir dwelleth now at Tupholme Priory, and beside inheriteth part of the Lord Willoughby's lands. Coppeldyke dwelleth at Harrington 2 miles from Spilesby Market. Ashkew dwelleth about Thornton Curtis. Wimbish hath Nocton Park Priory, and is beside a man of great possessions and ancient. He married the Lord Tailby's sister. Littlebury at Stainsbury in Hayworthingham. The Lord Borough dwelleth at Gainsborough. Gainsborough is his, and much land is about Sheffield in Axholme. Dallison a little o' this side Axholme. Heneage at Hainton, where he is lord and patron. The old Heneage lands pass not a £50 by the year. Hainton is within a 3 miles of Rayson market, and a 7 miles from Horn Castle. Sir Thomas Heneage hath done much cost there in translating and new building, with brick and abbey stone. Sandon dwelleth at Ashby, half a mile from Spilesby. Porter by Grantham. Harrington beside Ancester. Bilsby dwelleth by Bilsby, within a mile of Markby Priory. Fitzwilliams and Mablethorpe by Sutton on the seaside. Hastings, missing word. Wigsby a 3, missing word. Asterby in Bilsby, a man of mean land. Tuthby of Thuthby by Alford. Gedney of Mavis Enderby, a mean gentleman. Quathering by Wainfleet. St. Paul. Misseldon about Caster. Luddington. Turwith about Barton upon Humber. Turner. Sutton at Lincoln. Dimmock of Carlton by Lincoln. Massingbeard beside Wainfleet. Hall by Grantham. Wellaby at Hansted, a little from Stixwall Priory, a man of fair lands. Doncaster. Wakefield. Wakefield upon Calder is a very quick market town, and meetly large, well served of flesh and fish both from the sea and by rivers, whereof divers be thereabout at hand, so that all victual is a very good cheap there. A right honest man should fare well for 2d. a meal. In the town is but one chief church. There is a chapel beside, where was wont to be anacoreta in media urbe, unde et aliquando inventa fecunda. There is also a chapel of Our Lady on Calder Bridge, wont to be celebrated a peregrinis. A furrow length or more out of the town be seen dykes and bullocks, and monticulus egestae terrae indicium turis specularis, whereby appeareth that there hath been a castle. The Garines Earls of Surrey, as I read, were once lords of this town. It standeth now all by clothing. The Duke of York, father to Edward the 4th, was slain by Wakefield in battle. Bradford, a pretty quick market town, dimedio aut eo amplius minus. Watchfelder. It hath one parish church and a chapel of St. Sitha. It standeth much by clothing, and is distant 6 miles from Halifax, and 4 miles from Christestal Abbey. There is a confluence in this town of 3 brooks. One riseth above Bulleen Hall, so that the head is a mile dim from the town, and this at the town hath a bridge of 1 arch. Another riseth a 2 mile off, having a mill and a bridge of missing word. The 3 riseth 4 miles of having missing word. Bulleen Hall, sometime the Bulleens, now it longeth to Tempest. It standeth a mile missing word Bradford. Beverley. Beverley is a very large town, but I could not perceive that ever it was walled, though there be certain gates of stone portcullis for defence. In the town be 3 parish churches. The minster where St. John, sometime Bishop of York, lieth, and 1 chapel. There is also a house of Grey Friars, and another of Black, and a house as a commandery of St. John's. There is a great gut cut from the town to the ripe of Hull river, whereby pretty vessels come thither. There cometh out of the Bishop's Park westward, thereby a little fresh brook, to the town. To this town long many great and ancient privileges as to a sanctuary. The town hath in their commune seal the figure of a beaver. Bede calleth the place where Beverley is now Silva Derorum Anglica Dierowold. Instead of the minster there was in old time an abbey of monks and nuns, destroyed almost by the Danes. Brithung, St. John's deacon, was sometime abbot there, and is buried there. There is also buried St. Wimwildus. Leeds, 2 miles lower than Crystal Abbey on Ayr River, is a pretty market, having 1 parish church reasonably well builded, and as large as Bradford, but not so quick as it. The town standeth most by clothing. Hull, Pickering, Tadcaster, Boroughbridge, Aldborough, York, Ketterick, Ripon, Richmond. End of section 1. Section 2. Part 9 of the Itinerary of John Leland, in or about the years 1535 to 1543. Edited by Lucy Toulmin, Volume 5. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For further information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. In Derbyshire, Bruscow, Briscott, a priory of Blake Shannons of the foundation of the Earls of Derby, a mile from Latham, it standeth not very far from Duggills. Many of the line of the Earls of Derby lieth there. Holland, a priory of Blake monks, a 2 miles from Wigan, the Wottons were founders there. Sawley standeth on Calder river. Lancastershire containeth 5 little shires. West Derbyshire, alias Derbyshire. Leopold, alias Liverpool, a paved town, hath but a chapel. Walton, a 4 miles off, not far from the sea, is parish church. The King hath a castellet there, and the Earl of Derby hath a stone house there. Irish merchants come much thither, as to a good haven. After that, Mersey Water coming toward Runcorn in Cheshire, listeth among the commune people the name, and to Leopold, a 5 mile on the other side in Lancastershire, is called Runcorn Water. At Leopold is small custom paid that causeth merchants to resort. Good merchandise at Leopold, and much Irish yarn that Manchester men do buy there. Warrington upon Mersey in Chestershire, a paved town, 1 church, a Freres Augustine at the bridge end. The town is of a pretty bigness. The parish church is at the tail of all the town. It is a better market than Manchester. Thelwall, sometime a havenet and little city, as it appeareth by the King's records. Now Fishgarths mar the haven, and the old town now a poor village. It standeth a 2 miles upward from Warrington. Thelwall so called because it was walled about with great ... lease, that is to ... de logs or timber posts. Wigan paved, as big as Warrington and better builded. There is 1 parish church amid the town, some merchants, some artificers, some farmers. Mr. Bradshaw hath a place called Haw, a mile from Wigan. He hath found much cannel like sea coal in his ground very profitable to him, and Gerard of Ince dwelleth in that parish. Winwick a good benefice, a 5 mile off, and a 3 from Warrington. Ormkirk, a 3 miles or 5 miles from Leopold, and about a 2 miles from Latham, a parish church in the town, no river by it, but moss is off each side. Latham, most part of stone, the chiefest house of the Earls of Derby, 2 miles from Ormskirk. Newton, on a brook called Golferdon, a little poor market, whereof Mr. Langton hath the name of his barony. Sir Percy Lee of Bradley hath his place at Bradley in a park, a 2 miles from Newton. Newton is a 4 miles from Morley Hall. Prescod, a little market having no notable water about it, a 4 mile from Mersey up toward Leopold. Mr. Molyneux, a knight of great lands, a 2 miles from Prescod, dwelleth at a place called Crostoff. Tuckstaff, a park of the King's hard by his house. Knowlesley, a park having a pretty house of the Earls of Derby within a mile of Prescod. Sir William Norris dwelleth at a house called Speke, a 2 or 3 miles from Prescod, and thereabout from Flor. Esquire ... Thomas Island dwelleth at Runcorn on Mersey river. Mr. Leland reckoneth Preston in Anderness to be a little shire, and so there be 6 shires or hundreds in Lancashire. West Derbyshire. Chateley Moor in Derbyshire is a 3 or 4 miles in breadth. Glassbroke river cometh within less than a mile of Morley Hall. There be 12 parish churches in Derbyshire, but they be large. Winwick parsonage hath a park, and is a 2 or 3 miles from Warrington. Fleet and another brook or 2 cometh into Glazebrook, and Glazebrook goeth into Mersey. Douglas river coming by Wigan market goeth into the sea by itself toward Latham. Chateley Moor, a 6 miles in length, some way brast up within a mile of Morley Hall, and destroyed much ground with moss thereabout, and destroyed much fresh water fish thereabout, first corrupting with stinking water Glazebrook, and so Glazebrook carried stinking water and moss into Mersey water, and Mersey corrupted carried the rolling moss part to the shores of Wales, part to the Isle of Man, and some into Ireland. In the very top of Chapin Moor, where the moss was highest and brake, is now a fair plain valley, as was in times past, and a rill runneth in it, and pieces of small trees be found in the bottom. Canal and coal pits in divers parts of Derbyshire. The great mine of Canal is at Haw 2 miles from Wigan. One Bradshaw dwelleth at Haw. Martin Mere toward Latham is the greatest mere of Lancastershire, a 4 miles in length, and a 3 in breadth. Salfordshire. Manchester. Bury on Irwell Water, 4 or 5 miles from Manchester, but a poor market. There is a ruin of a castle by the parish church in the town. It longed with the town sometime to the Pilkingtons, now to the Earls of Derby. Pilkington had a place hard by Pilkington Park, 3 mile from Manchester. Bolton upon Moor Market standeth most by cottons and coarse yarn. Divers villages in the moors about Bolton do make cottons. Neither the site nor ground about Bolton is so good as it is about Bury. They burn at Bolton some cannel, but more sea coal, of the which the pits be not far off. They burn turf also. Yarn in times past made at Orwick, a ... miles from Manchester. Yarn sometimes made about Bury, a market town on Irwell. Now, for lack of wood, the blow-shops decay there. Wild boars, bulls, and falcons bred in times past at Blakely. Chorley. Market towns in Lelandshire. Chorley, a wonderful poor or rather no market. Croston, a 3 miles from Chorley, towards Latham, a 6 miles from Chorley, a poor or no market. There be about a 7 or 8 large parishes in Lelandshire. Darwent river cometh through a piece of Lelandshire. Darwent cometh by Mr. Langton's place, Baron of Newton, by Warrington, a mile above Preston. Ribble riseth in Ribblesdale above Sawley Abbey, and so to Sawley, a 4 miles beneath Sawley. It receiveth Calder that cometh by Whalley, and after receiveth another water called Oder. Whalley, a 10 miles from Preston. Sawley, a ... miles or more. Blackburnshire, out of a chart of Merton College. The next river by sea moveth by Carlowle, backward on the same shore. There is a water made coming from Chiswick to the sea. The next to that coming to the sea is there called Esk. Next to that Dodon, and betwixt them is set Millom. Next upward into Lancastershire is set the mouth of the river of Leven, then Kent river coming to the sea. After is set Ribble, and then Mersey water. In another cart of Merton College. Bridport is set as middle way betwixt Weymouth and Lyme. Lelandus, at Bridport be made good daggers. Lancastershire, the head of Lune river, by all estimation, must be in Cotterine Hill, or not far from the root of it. Out of this hill riseth Ure, Saul, and Eden. Howbeit Mr. Moore of St. Catherine's Hall in Cambridge thus instructed me of Lune river. It riseth in a hill called Crawshaw, the which is in the edge of Richmondshire, and issueth out of 3 or 4 heads. He would it should be first called Lune in Dentdale, though the name of Dent seems to show otherwise. North from Dentdale is Garsdale, and through that runneth a water that after cometh into Sebar Vale, and there is also a water meeting with Garsdale water, and a little lower in one stream they go into Dentdale water, which he supposeth to be the stream that afterward is called Lune. Beside the waters afore it receiveth at the foot of Sebar Valley a great brook, the which cometh out of the north betwixt Westmereland and Richmondshire. This river runneth a 7 miles, or it come to Dentdale foot, and hath received into his bottom the waters aforesaid. from Dentdale foot it entereth into Lansdale, peradventure so corruptly called for Lunesdale, and runneth in it at 8 or 9 miles southward, and in this dale is Kirkby, a very great and famous parish, a 4 miles from the foot of Dentdale. From Lunesdale, in whose foot is Hornby Castle, longing to the Lord Monteagle, 1/2 a mile from the Lune. From thence it runneth to Lancaster, set on the south side of Lune, corruptly spoken for Luncaster, 8 miles off, whither it ebbeth and floweth. Some say that the north arm upward is principal stream of Lune, the which is not of estimation till it come into Lunesdale. The ruins of old walls about the bridge were only of the suppressed priory. Borrow, now a village set in Lunesdale, is a 6 miles beneath the foot of Dentdale, hath been by likelihood some notable town. The ploughmen find there an earring, lapides quadratos, and many other strange things, and this place is much spoken of the inhabitants there. In Westmorlandshire is but one good market town called Kendale, otherwise, as I ween, Kirkby Kendal. It hath the name of the river called Kent, unde et Kendale, sed emporium Laneis panis celeberimum. In the town is but one church. The circuit of the parish by the country adjacent hath many chapels, and divers in the town self. About 1/2 a mile off, on the east side of the town, is on a hill a park longing to young Mr. Parr, the chiefest of that name, and there is a place as it were a castle. Kent river is of a good depth, not well to be occupied with boats for rolling stones and other moles. It riseth of very many heads, be likelihood springing within the same shire, a 7 or 8 miles from Kentdale, where is a mere communely called Kenmore. A 2 miles about Kendale they come to one good bottom, and so to Kentdale town that standeth on the west side of it. The head of Ken river. It riseth at Kenmore in a pool somewhat large about a mile in compass, and much fish in it. The place of the head and all the barony of Kendal is in Westmorland, and keepeth Sher Court at Appleby, and beside thither cometh all Westmorland. Ken Nuage and Moor is at 8 miles flat north from Kendal on the way to Perith, and there is a chapel longing as a part unto Kendale parish. Kentmore Hall, Gilpin's house. The first part of the river descendeth in betwixt 2 hills. New bridge 2 miles lower of timber. Then to Barley, a small bridge of stone in Storley hamlet, a mile lower. Thence 2 miles to Bowstone bridge of stone. Then to Burnside a mile, where the Bellinghams dwell, and is of stone. Then to Kendal, a 1.5 miles lower, and runneth through Stramongate bridge of stone, having 8 or 9 arches, and the parish church by east is touched with this river. And thence 1/4 and more of a mile it goeth to Netherbridge of stone of 3 or 4 arches, standing plain east toward York, and then 4 or 5 miles to Levenbridge of stone, and then to ... Kendale gates, notable as ways but not defensible. Strickland gate to Strickland village northward. Stramongate named of the bridge. Kirkgate, the greatest street lieth north and south. Pront river goeth into Ken river, a mile above Stramongate bridge. There longeth about 30 chapels and hamlets to the head church of Kendale. The parsonage was impropriate to St. Mary of York. The castle is by east 1/4 of a mile from the town. Appleby is the shire town, but now it is but a poor village, having a ruinous castle wherein the prisoners be kept. There is an old castle on the ... side of Eden Water called Burg. About a dim from the castle is a village called Burgham, and there is a great pilgrimage to Our Lady. At Burgham is an old castle that the commune people there saith doth sink. About this Burgham ploughmen find in the fields many square stones, tokens of old buildings. The castle is set in a strong place by reasons of rivers enclosing the country thereabout. There is a very great lake or mere, whereof part is under the edge of Furness fells, called Winnemerewath, wherein a strange fish called a char not seen else there in the country as they say. About the borders of Westmorlandshire and Lancastershire be many dales, and in every one of them a brook giving its name to the dale. There is in Westmorland, as it is said, a famous stone as a limes of old time inscribed. Within a mile of Penrith, but in Westmorland, is a ruin, as some suppose, of a castle within a flight shot of Loder, and as much of Emot water, standing almost as a mediamnis betwixt them. The ruin is of some called the Round Table, and of some Arthur's Castle. A mile lower meeteth Loder and Emot at Burgham Castle. Market towns in Durhamshire: Dunholm, Akeland, Witchingham, the quick market of Darlington standing betwixt Tees and Wear, Stockton upon Tees, Walsingham upon Wear, almost in the middle way betwixt Stanhope and Akeland, Hartlepool. Castles in Durhamshire: Dunholm, Akeland, Prudo upon Tyne, Stockton upon Tees, Barnard's Castle, Lumley Castle not far from Chester. Abbeys and priories in Durhamshire: Dunholm upon Wear River, Finkelow upon Wear, a cell of 13 monks longing to Durham, Wearmouth, Jarrow. There was a priory not far from Darlington, as I remember, about Tees River. The limits of Durhamshire: Tees River, Tyne River, until he receiveth Derwent water. Earl of Northumbria, Lord of the honours of Cockermouth and Petworth, Lord Percy, Lucy, Lord Poynings, Fitzpaine, Brian. Cockermouth came by Lucy, Petworth by gift of a king, Henry I. Fitzpaine and Brian's lands came to Poynings, and by Poyning heir general all three to Percy. The Earl of Northumbria, castles and manors. Cockermouth in Cumberland, a 700 li by year. Alnwick, Warkworth Castle, Langley and Prudhoe in Northumberland. Rothbury, lordship on Cocket, a 7 miles above Alnwick, where is such a town as Corbridge. Corbridge lordship, where appear great tokens of buildings by square stones. Chatton lordship upon Till, a mile from Chillingham. In Yorkshire: Seamer, Hummonby, near Seamer, Pocklington Market are 2 miles from Seamer, Leconfield 2 miles from Beverley, Wrestle Castle 2 miles from Howden Market, where the Bishop of Durham hath a fair palace. Catton, where is a park, as is almost of the lordships afore rehearsed. Spofford, a great village, are 2 miles from Otley upon Ayr River. Topcliffe on Swale, a goodly manor house in a park. Tadcaster and Healy, Lindley by Spofford, where Sir Thomas Johnson now is heir. He had in Kent a 500 mark of Poynings lands. In South Saxe Poynings lordship. Petworth. Torry Bryan in Somersetshire, that Master Kitson bought. The Lord Marquis of Exeter had much of his lands in Devonshire. He had castles in Wales, and was there a great Lord Marcher. Peradventure Payne Castle by Wye was his, for he bare the name of the Lord Fitzpaine. He had some land in Suffolk and Cambridgeshire. He had Tallachan, a castle about the mouth of Tay, coming from Caermedine. From Caerlule to Burgh on the sands, 6 miles. From Burgh to Workington, 12 miles. From Workington to St. Bees, 14. From St. Bees to Furness by the sea coast, 14 miles. From Furness to Lancaster, 12 miles. From Lancaster to Preston, 20 miles. Esc flulimes et Scotiae et Angliae, Lither defluit in Escam. At Motel Lithel was a moated place of a gentleman called Sir Walter Sealaby, the which was killed there, and the place destroyed in King Edward III, when the Scots went to Durham, and their king was take by Copland at Durham on a hill thereby, where was many Scots buried. Bowness is at the point or plain of the river of Eden, where is a little poor steeple as a fortlet for a brunt, and it is on the hither side of the river of Eden, about 8 miles from Caerlule. About this Bowness is part of the Pict wall evidently remaining, and it may be supposed that it is called Bowness, as who should say the wall ye, or point, or end. Burgh in the sand standeth a mile off from the hither bank of Eden. It is a village by the which remain the ruins of a great place, now clean desolated, where King Edward the First died. Burgh standeth from Bowness 3 miles, and 4 miles or 5 from Cairluel. Burgh longed sometimes to the Morvilles. Here was 15 years ago the Lord Maxwell sore wounded, many slain and drowned in Eden. Missing words. At Drumburg the Lord Dacre's father builded upon old ruins a pretty pile for defence of the country. Drumburg is almost in the midway betwixt Bowness and Burgh. The stones of the picked wall were pulled down to build Dumburg, for the wall is very near it. Netherby is 7 miles north from Cairluel, and Esk river runneth on the north side of it. There hath been marvellous buildings, as appear by ruinous walls, and men alive have seen rings and staples in the walls, as it had been stays or holes for ships. On the one side of it is the bateable ground, so that it is as a limes Angliae et Scotiae. The ruins be now 3 miles at the least from the flowing water of Solway sands. The grass groweth now on the ruins of the walls. Rockcliffe, a pretty pile or castle of the Lord Dacre's over Eden on the farther right, about 4 mile from Cairluel. The town of Cockermouth standeth on the river of Coker, the which thwarteth over the town, and Coker runneth in Darwent hard at the point of the castle of Cockermouth. The river of Darwent after that he cometh to a straight course, casteth out an army of his abundant water that maketh a pool or loch called Ouse, and afterward straighteth, and at the last cometh into Dargwent, and so maketh an isle. Forests. The great forest of Englewood, the forest of Nichol belonging to the Duke of Lancaster, the forest of Ennerdale. 30 years ago not far from the Chapel of the Moor, the which is in Coombe Whitton parish in Gillisland, and standeth 6 miles east from Cairluel, was found a grave, and therein Bonis inusitae magnitudinis. Within 1/4 mile of Cairluel, 20 years ago, was take up pipes of an old conduit, whose head by likelihood, missing word, walled Tipping Castle. Unreadable text. The city of Cairluel is in compass scant a mile, and is walled with a right fair and strong wall, ex lapide quadrato sub rufo. In the wall be 3 gates, Boker Gate south, Caldugate west, and Richard Gate north. The castle being within the town is in some part as a closer of the wall. Leland, the Irish men call Bale a town, and so peradventure did the old Scots. Thus might be said that the Lugubalia soundeth Lewel town. In the city be 2 parish churches, of the which the one is in the body of the cathedral church, in the which be canons regulars, as else be in no cathedral church of England. The other is of St. Cuthbert. There is in the town a chapel of St. Alban, and also within the walls 2 houses of Freres, black and grey. In digging to make new building in the town, oftentimes hath been, and now a late, found diverse foundations of the old city, as pavements of streets, old arches of doors, coins, stones squared, painted pots, many hid in pots so old and moulded that when it was strongly touched it went almost to moulder, as in missing word Glalby's house in digging for the squaring of his garden and orchard, the which standeth much south. The whole site of the town is sore changed, for whereas the streets were and great edifices, now be vacant and garden plots. The city of Cairluel standeth in the forest of Inglewood. The body of the cathedral church is of an older building than the choir, and it is as a filial derived from St. Oswald's fast by Pontfreyt. In the fields about Cairluel in ploughing hath be found diverse corn lines and other stones, well entailed for seals, and in other places of Cumberland in ploughing hath be found bricks containing the prints of antique works. The length of Cumberland by the shore is from a water called Duddon, the which divideth Furness land from Cumberland, unto a little water or mere called Polt Ross, the which divideth the county of Northumberland on the east side from Cumberland. The breadth of Cumberland is from a water called Emot, that divideth on the south side on the one part Cumberland from Westmorland, until he enter into the river of Eden 2 miles from Penrith by east, and so on the east side of Eden to a brook called Cuckburn Beck, the which divideth likewise Cumberland from Westmorland, unto the river of Esk on the north side, the which divideth Cumberland from the bateable ground, until it come to the arm of the sea, the which divideth England from Scotland. Market towns in the Shire: Caerleul. Penrith, a market town by south 16 miles from Caerleul, where as a strong castle of the king's, and standeth on a little water by force cut out of Petteril. But Penrith standeth notable dim a mile from the river of Emot, and a mile from the town or castle of Burgham, that longeth to the Earl of Cumberland. In Penrith is one parish church and a Grey Friars. Cockermouth, a market town, standing on the west side of Derwent river, 4 or 5 miles from the sea shore, and 20 miles from Caerleul. Also on the west side of Darwent is a pretty creek whereas ships come to, whereas is a little pretty fisher town called Workington, and there is the chief house of Sir Thomas Culwin. On the east side of the isle, whereas the water of Dargwent riseth, is a little poor market town called Keswick, and it is a mile from St. Herbert's Isle that Bede speaketh of. Divers springs cometh out of Borrowdale, and so make a great lough that we call a pool, and therein be 3 isles. In the one is the head places of Mr. Radcliffe, another is called St. Herbert's Isle, where is a chapel. The third is Vicar Isle, full of trees like a wilderness. Abbeys or priories in Cumberland: the Shannons of Caerleul. Wetherall, a cell of St. Mary's Abbey, 3 miles south east above Caerleul, above the river of Eden, on the same side of the river of Eden that Caerleul doth. Lenacost, an abbey of Black Shannons, 8 miles from Caerleul, upon the north side of the river of Irthing. Holme Coltrane, abbey of White Monks. St. Bees, in Copland, hard on the west sea, a cell longing to St. Mary Abbey of York, about 26 miles or more plain west. Calder Abbey of White Monks in Capeland, not very far from St. Bees, and near to Egremont Castle. At Kiley, Primus Annis, Henrici VIII, not far from Norham, in the lordship of the Bishop of Durham, was found, betwixt 2 stones, buckles of an arming girdle, tips and bars of the same of pure gold, a pommel and a cross, for a sword of gold buckles and tips of gold for spurs. Dr. Ruthall had some of them. Egermont, missing word, miles by south from Cockermouth. It longeth to the Lord Fitzwalter. It standeth by the market town of Egremont. At Cockermouth a good market town, a castle of the Earl of Northumberland, the which joineth hard to the town. Bow Castle longing to the king 10 miles east from Caerleul. Near about Bow Castle, alias Bell Castle, be found Britain bricks, with entailed work and portraitures in the old foundations. From Bow Castle to Narwood, a fair castle of the Lord Dacres, 4 miles south from Narwood, 8 miles from Caerleul. Millom, a castle longing to Sir John Huddleston, standing on the river of Duddon or Duddon Sands, upon a creek by the seaside. A 60 year ago fish was found there of an infinite greatness. Highhead Castle, a 6 or 7 miles from Caerleul by south. It standeth on Eve Beck. Kirk Oswald Castle, south-south-east, 12 miles from Caerleul, and south from Narwood. It standeth almost on Eden. Penrith, a castle of the king's, by the town of Penrith, 16 miles south from Caerleul, and 5 miles south-west from Kirkoswald. There cometh at Ingmer Meadow, out of Petteril, a gut to Penrith, and at Carlton, half a mile of it running into Emot, alias Amont. Strickland, Bishop of Caerleul, did the cost to dig it. Greystoke Castle of the Lord Dacres, 14 miles from Caerleul south, and 3 miles west from Penrith. Rose, a castle of the Bishops of Caerleul, 6 miles from Caerleul by south-west. Bishop Kite made it very fresh. Ruins of castles desolated and towns. Remember to ask by the Itinerary how the old towns stood. In the forest of Inglewood, 6 miles from Caerleul, appear ruins of a castle called Castle Lewin. These things following I learned of the vicar or person of Corbridge at Newcastle. Corbridge about 11 miles from Newcastle, but to go to it the next way from Durham it is not past a 16 or 18 miles. Corbridge is on the same ripe of Tyne that Newcastle is. The church of Corbridge is dedicate unto St Andrew. The personage was once impropriate to the Priory of Teignmouth, since by exchange to Caerleul. The town at this time is full meanly builded. The names of divers streets that hath been there yet hath names, as old people there testify, and great tokens of old foundations be yet found there, and also numismata ro. The stone bridge that now is at Corbridge over Tyne is large, but it is set somewhat lower upon Tyne than the old bridge was. There be evident tokens yet seen where the old bridge was, and thereabout cometh down a pretty brook on the same side that the town is on and hard by it, and goeth into Tyne. I think verily that this brook is called Corve, though the name be not well known there, and that the town beareth the name of it, Colus Flu. By this brook, as among the ruins of the old town, is a place called Colcester, where hath been a fortress or castle. The people there say that there dwelled in it one Yoton, who they fable to have been a giant. There is no bridge on the Tyne, as I remember, betwixt Newcastle and Corbridge. As far as I can perceive by the book of the life of St Oswin the martyr, Coleridge is alway put there for Corbridge. There appear ruins of arches of a stone bridge over Tyne river at Castle, longing to the Earl of Westmoreland, a 3 miles lower on the river than Corbridge. Chipchase bridge of on Tyne. Moanboucher was a man of fair lands in Northumberland, and Dr. Davell told me that the hospital in Newcastle hath yet lands of his gift. The Rudhams were men of fair lands in Northumberland about Till river, until one of them, having to wife one of the Humframville daughters, killed a man of name, and thereby lost the principal of 600 mark lands by year, so that at this time Rudham of Northumberland is but a man of mean lands. Hasselrig of Northamptonshire hath about a 50 li land in Northumberland and Eslington, where is a pretty pile, is Hasselrig's, and one of the Collingwoods dwelleth now in it, and hath the oversight of his lands. The river of Tame riseth 10 miles by south-west within the land, and cometh into Tyne about a mile above Gateshead, and not far beneath Ravensworth Castle. Tarset Castle ruins in Northumberland, hard by North Tyne, long now to the Lord Borough. There was one of the Greys of Northumberland, a man of great bruit in the time of Edward the Fourth, that was suspect with the Queen of Scots of adultery, whereupon he being accused of a gentleman of Scotland, came with a band, as it is said, of 1,000 men to Edinburgh, and there cast down his glove to fight in the lists with his accuser, but he departed without fighting, yet it was supposed that Grey was not accused thereof without a cause. The Herbertels' lands in Northumberland, that was 300 marks by the year, came of late days to 2 daughters, whereof one was married to Sir Thomas Percy, that was for treason hanged at Tyburn. The other was married to Fitton of Chestershire. Mr. Dr. Davell told me that the limes of the bishopric of Durham goeth beyond the mouth on Darwent, up upon Trent, even to the parish of Rytown. A pile or castellet at Bowes on Watling Street. The Davells came out of Normandy, and since they have been men of great possessions in the north parts of England, but they came in Edward the second time to decay and ruin, for the chief of the Davells, that was Sir Lowson Davell and Sir Hugh Davell, both barons, as Mr. Dr. Davell saith, but sufficiently to me proved not, took Thomas Duke of Lancaster and the barons' part against Edward the second, and Peter Gaveston, whereupon Davell's lands were attainted and sparkled. Yet remained of the name 4 or 5 younger brethren, that after got mean lands, and one of them after in descent consumed 100 li lands by the year in Nottinghamshire in mere hawking and hunting. There yet remain mean gentlemen of the name. The principal land and habitation of the Davells was about Pontefract in Yorkshire. Much of the Gascoignes' land and the lands of Truewit, alias Turret, of Lincolnshire, long to the Davells. The name of the original house of the Davells yet remaineth in Normandy, about the parts, as I have learned, of Alençon. Roger Thornton, the great rich merchant of Newcastle in Edward IV. days, by whom the Lumleys' lands were greatly augmented, as by marriage of his daughter and heir, builded St. Catherine's Chapel, the Town Hall, and a place for poor almsmen, by Sand Hill Gate a little lower than Newcastle Bridge, on the very ripe of Tyne, within the town of Newcastle. The isle and almost all the lands that the Lord Lumley hath in Yorkshire and Northumberland was this Thornton's. This Roger Thornton was the richest merchant that ever was dwelling in Newcastle. One John Ward, a rich merchant of Newcastle, made a maison Dieu for 12 poor men and 12 poor women by the Augustine Friars in Newcastle. One Christopher Brigham, a merchant of Newcastle, made of late a little hospital by the Grey Friars in Newcastle. The walls of Newcastle were begun, as I have heard, in King Edward I's day. As I heard, by this occasion, a great rich man of Newcastle was taken prisoner by the Scots out of the town self, as it is reported, whereupon he was ransomed for a great sum, and returning home he began to make a wall on the ripe of Tyne river from Sandhill to Pandon Gate, and beyond that to the tower again the Augustine Friars. The residue of the merchants of the town, seeing this towardness of one man, set to their helping hands, and continued until the whole town was strongly about walled, and this work was finished in Edward III. days, as I have heard. The strength and magnificence of the walling of this town far passeth all the walls of the cities of England and of most of the towns of Europa. Prior Castle of Durham, the last save one, builded the tower in Farn Island for defence out of the ground. There was a chapel and a poorhouse afore. There was a house of Shannons at Ovingham upon Tyne, again Prudhoe, on the other side of Tyne, a master and 3 Shannons sell to Hexham. Humframville gave the parsonage of Ovingham to Hexham that they should find certain Shannons there. Morley of Morpeth was once lord of Workworth Castle on Coquetmouth. Dr. Davell told me that Anthony de Beck builded or renewed Kensington, as he hath heard, and gave it to king or prince. He builded Durham Place in London. Missing text. Thence it goeth within a mile and less of Newcastle, and so crooketh upward toward Tynemouth. Dr. Davell told me that St. Nicholas Church in Newcastle standeth on the picked wall. Betwixt Thirlwell and North Tyne, in the waste ground, standeth yet notable pieces of the wall, the which was made ex lapide quadrato, as it there appeareth yet. Look, whereas the ground is best inhabited through the wall, so there it lest appeareth by reason of buildings made of the stones of the wall. The wall on the farther side towards the Picts was strongly dyked. Beside the stone wall there appear yet in very many places vestigia muri cespititi, that was an arrow shot a this side the stone wall. But that it was thoroughly made as the stone wall was it doth not well appear there. From Bowness to Burgh about a 4 miles, from thence it goeth within half a mile of Caerlule, and less on the north side, and crosseth over Eden a 3/4 of a mile beneath Caerlule, and so to Terraby, a little village a mile from Caerlule, then through the barony of Linstock, and through Gillisland on the north side of the river of Arding, a 1/4 of a mile of the Abbey of Lenacost, and then a 3 miles above Lenacost it crosseth over Arding, then over the little brook of Polt Ross, the which divideth Gillisland in Cumberland from South Tynedale in Northumberland, then to a castle called Thirlwell, standing on the same thence directly east through South Tyndale, not far from the great ruins of the castle of Carveran, the which be near Thirlwell, and so over North Tyne then, directly east through the head of Northumberland. There is a fame that Oswald won the battle at Hazeldene, a 2 miles east from St. Oswald's Ash, and that Hazeldene is it that Bede calleth Havenfield, and men there about yet find small wood crosses in the ground. Northumberland. In South Tynedale, as in that is besaid Hexhamshire, except and yet as a part of South or South West Tynedale, is but one parish church, and that is called Holtwhistle. There be beside Aliquot Sasella, whereof one is not far from Wellington, and it is called Whitechapel. There lieth one of the holy Aidens, and other holy men in the churchyard by the chapel. In North Tynedale is but one parish church called Simonsburn. In it is aliquot Sasella. Since I heard that Simonsburn is in South Tynedale, and that in North Tynedale is only Bellingham Chapel longing to Simonsburn. In Rydesdale be but 3 parish churches, the chiefest is Ellersdeane, then Hallerstein, and Corsancid. To these parishes resort the whit-riding men, otherwise thieves of that English march. Read riseth within 3 miles of the Scottish March. It riseth in the north, and cometh south west through Rydesdale, and so into North Tyne Arm, a little lower than Bellingham, that standeth somewhat of North Tyne, and is a 10 miles above Hexham. North Tyne riseth plain north, and runneth almost plain north till he meeteth with South Tyne. Some hold opinion that at Holystone, or in the river of Coquet thereabout, were 3000 christened in one day in primitiva ecclesia sacs. Coquet river for a certain space of miles divideth Cockdale from Rydesdale. Coquet cometh by Harbottle, a goodly castle, and thence to Lym Briggs, some time of stone now fallen. Thereabout was great building, but now desolation. Newcastle, a market town. Hexham, a market town. Morpeth, a market town, is 12 long miles from Newcastle. Wansbeck, a pretty river, runneth through the side of the town. On the hither side of the river is the principal church of the town. On the same side is the fair castle standing upon a hill, longing with the town to the Lord Dacus of Gilsland. The town is long and meetly well builded, with low houses, the streets paved. It is far fairer town than Alnwick. A quarter of a mile out of the town on the hither side of Wansbeck was Newminster Abbey of white monks, pleasant with water and very fair wood about it. Alnwick, market town. Bamborough, now no market town. Berwick, a market town. Castles in Northumberland. Newcastle. Chipchase, a pretty town and castle hard on the east part of the arm of North Tyne, the which divideth Tynedale from Northumberland. For Tynedale, though it be as a part of Northumberland, yet it is as a part privileged within itself. Tynemouth Abbey, sometime used for a castle. Dallowell Castle, 4 miles from Tynemouth, and within a mile of the shore. Otterburn Castle, standing on Otter in Rydesdale, the which joineth hard upon North Tynedale. There be ruins of a castle longing to the Lord Borough at Midford, at the south side of Wansbeck, 4 miles above Morpeth. It was beaten down by the king, for once a Gilbert Middleton robbed a cardinal coming out of Scotland, and fled to his castle of Midford. Morpeth Castle standeth by Morpeth town. It is set on a high hill, and about the hill is much wood. The town and castle belongeth to the Lord Dacres. It is well maintained. Witherington Castle, longing to the Witheringtons, standeth within half a mile of the shore, somewhat as touching against Coquet Island. By it runneth a little brook on the north side, and there is a little village of the same name. The brook runneth into the sea by itself. Wirkworth Castle standeth on the south side of Coquet Water. It is well maintained and is large. It longed to the Earl of Northumberland. It standeth on a high hill, the which for the more part is included with the river, and is about a mile from the sea. There is a pretty town, and at the town end is a stone bridge with a tower on it. Beyond the bridge is Bamboroughshire. Alnwick Castle. Howick, a little pile longing to the a mile from the shore. Dunstanborough, a 2 miles beyond Howick, hard on the sea shore. It standeth on a high stone rock. The castle is more than half a mile in compass, and there hath been great building in it. Thereby is a strong Betwixt Dunstanborough and Bamborough is Embleton, a mile from the shore, and a mile from Dunstanborough. Bamborough, sometime a huge and great castle, one of the strongest in those parts. Aggerston, a tower upon the south side of Lindis river. Chillingham Castle, longing to Sir Edward Grey, whose wife was married to Sir Robert Heldecar. Ford Castle in Glendale upon the east side of Till. It is meetly strong but in decay. Etal Castle standing on plain ground hard on the east side of Till, longing to the Earl of Rutland. Eaton Castle longing to Sir Edward Grey, 2 miles lower on Till than Etal. It standeth on the west side of Till. The Scots at Flodden Field beat it sore. Work Castle on the south side of Tweed, a pretty town there. Norham Castle on the same side. Berwick on the north side. Houses of religion in Northumberland. Bolton, of Shannons in Cokedale, which they call commonly Glynedale. The Lord Rose was founder there. Holystone Nunnery in Ridsdale, betwixt Aden Bridge and Hexham. Hexham. Lamley, a nunnery on South Tyne. Brinkbourne Priory on Cocket. Blake Shannons, by most likelihoods of the Lyles foundation, or the Feltons before the Lyles. Holy Island monks. Bamborough, a cell to St. Oswald. Newminster. Farm. Cocket, a cell to Tynemouth. Tynemouth. Blanchland, White Shannons in Northumberlandshire, for it standeth in the farther side of Derwent. From Derwent mouth to Wearmouth, the low country betwixt is called Wirralshire. Part or most part of Chester is in Wirral. Whereas the hospital is now of St. Edmund, at Gateshead in Wirral was sometimes a monastery, as I have heard, and by likelihood the same that Bede speaketh of. Castles. Hutton, a fair castle in the midst of Northumberland, as in the breadth of it. It is of 4 or 5 miles north from Fenwick Pike, and this is the oldest house of the Swinburnes. Wallington Castle, 2 miles east from Hutton. It is the chiefest house of the Fenwicks. Sir John Fenwick is now lord of it. Derwent. Fennis, a little river, cometh into Tyne on the south side, a mile above Newcastle. Tyne. Colne river cometh by Lanchester, or it come to Chester in the street. Lanchester are 6 miles west from Chester. Headley Brook meeteth at Chester, or thereabout, with Colne water. Pont. Wansbeck. Cocket riseth in Rydesdale in a ground bearing ling and somewhat fenny. Aln. Rye. Breamish is the very water of Till, but at the head and a certain course it is called Breamish, and after loseth the name and is called Till. Conk, alias Cocket. Low. Glyne riseth in Cheviot hills, and so into Glynedale on to Newton village, where is a tower. There is a little brook called Beaumont, coming out of Scotland, runneth into Glyne to Langton village, 9 miles off, where is a ruin of a tower a mile off. So to Copland village a mile, where the water breaketh into arms, making islets, but soon after meeting, and so are 2 miles o' this side Ford Castle into Till. Till riseth in the hills of Cheviot, and so cometh into Glynedale on to a castle called Chillingham Castle, a 6 miles from the Cheviot hills, so to Ford Castle, and 8 miles off to Ethel Castle, on the bridge of stone down on the east side a mile, to Hetton Castle, on the west side of the Till, a 3 miles and a half off. So to Twistlebridge, of stone 1 bow, but great and strong, where is a townlet and a tower a 2 miles off. So to Horncliffe, a little village on the east side, not half a mile off, and therein to Tweed. Horncliffe is half a mile above Norham. Tweed riseth in Tweeddale in Scotland, at a town, as I hear say, called Peeble, and so cometh through the forest of Etterick in Scotland, and so through Tynedale in Scotland, the people whereof rob sore and continually in Glynedale and Bamboroughshire, and at a little brook called Rydon Burn, the which parteth England and Scotland by east and west, and cometh into Tweed. The great stream of Tweed toucheth on the English ground, as are limes between Scotland and it. So to Carham a good mile off, a little village where is a cell of 2 Shannons of Kirkham in Yorkshire. At this Carham is a little tower of defence against the Scots. So to Work Castle, a mile off and more, a meetly strong fortress, to Cornhill, a little pile 2 miles off, against the which on the farther ripe in Scotland is Coldstream, a place of nuns. So to Norham Castle, where is also a meetly good town about a 3 miles off. So to Berwick, a 6 miles standing on the north side of Tweed a little. Thereby at the bridge on the south side of the water is Tweemouth, a suburb to the town, and thence. In Northumberland, as I hear say, be no forests except Cheviot hills, where is much brushwood, and some oak, ground overgrown with ling, and some with moss. I have heard say that Cheviot hills stretcheth 20 miles. There is great plenty of red deer and roebucks. The Forest of Loughs is in Tynedale on the west side of North Tyne, even betwixt the Tyne's arms. Betwixt Newcastle and Tynemouth little wood. Betwixt Newcastle and Morpeth little wood ground. Between Morpeth and Alnwick good plenty of wood in certain places, and many parks. 12 miles betwixt Newcastle and Morpeth, 12 long miles between Morpeth and Alnwick, 20 to Berwick. So from Newcastle to Berwick. Betwixt Alnwick and Berwick little plenty of wood. From Newcastle to Hexham are 14 miles, and that way little wood except at a few places. There they reckon not Hexham in Tynedale, but as a liberty by itself. It is the market of South Tynedale. The liberty of Hexham stretcheth a 10 miles south west one way. In Bamburghshire, part of Northumberland, is little or no wood. In Ridsdale no plenty of wood. In Glynedale here and there wood, and Cheviot serveth them well. But the great wood of Cheviot is spoiled now, and crooked old trees and shrubs remain. From Riddenbourne along Tweed to Berwick almost no wood. They burn sea coal that be digged at Morton, a little village in Glynedale, a 2 mile from Berwick. Glendale goeth along on Tweed from Roddenburn to Tweedmouth standing in Glendale. Holy Islandshire containeth all along the shore from Aggerston to Beal, and so along to Bamborough. End of the Itinerary of John Leland, in or about the years 1535 to 1543, Part 9.